Hello to everyone that can hear me. How are you? Good morning. We're going to start here on time. There's about 35 registered participants. Hi, Ellen. How are you? I have everybody muted, but hi. Tara, Ginny, Renee, Rob, Michael, Amy, how are you? Justin, Johnny. All right, it looks like we're slowed down here a little bit and it's 2 minutes after, so I'm gonna start with who we have. So what we're trying to do here for you guys is there's multiple seminars, but really our purpose is to try to help everyone make money in this current COVID environment that we're in. And there's really two ways to do it. You either have to double down on your current business and your current business model and really focus on how you can communicate with people and deliver your service in some way, shape, or form. So that's one bucket. Or you have to kind of reinvent yourself in some way, shape, or form. And we'll share some stories as we go through these next couple of weeks of seminars, these next 4 weeks of seminars. The last week is really when we're going to kind of open it up and have a discussion. We may be able to do that in the third week during the competitive analysis piece because I think we just have some extra time that day. So that's really our purpose here, to try to help you. And with that, the first thing that you need to understand to do this right. So you guys have seen on TV or you've seen seminars or webinars where people tell you that you need to go digital, right? You can't have meetings right now to do sales. If you're a restaurant, people aren't just going to walk in. So there's a lot. Everybody's telling you have to go digital, you have to go social, but they don't really tell you how. And if they do tell you how, it's the mechanical how, right? Open up a Facebook account, set up an account, run an ad. They really don't dig into what truly makes it work. And that is really what we are going to dig in here today. So I think a lot of people have heard that when you communicate on social and Facebook and what have you, that you have to come across as human and real, right? You can't just pitch people what you want to pitch them. It doesn't work. And the foundation of that comes from your archetype. So that's why we're starting with this very first seminar, is to start with that archetype so that you know that it comes from you. I also don't want to forget to mention that if you are a Main Street business or a restaurant or something to that effect, or a business that's really affected by this, we have some stuff on our website. So if you go to Capacity Marketing, I believe it's Inc. I should know that, huh? Hold on. CapacityMarketingInc.com, and you go into the blog section, there are articles there specific to tell you what to do in this environment. And there's even an article specifically for like restaurants and any business that could do pickup or delivery. Okay. Matt is moderating the chat. Can you see the chat, Matt?
Sure can. And I just put the website in the chat.
Fantastic. Can you see the chat, Matt? That was my first funny of the day. Okay. For a guy who's not that funny. All right. I'm going to share my screen and launch into this. Can you see the participants, Matt? Can you manage them at all? Meaning when they come in, can you admit them?
Nope, that's on you.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, y'all. I might have to bop in and out of here, but here we go. Yeah, I have it right here. It's not bad. All right. So real quick, a little bit about us for those of you who don't know us. We're Capacity Marketing. Our differentiation, and this will make sense as we go through these seminars, is we are really strategic in mind. We don't just market. We don't just advertise. We don't just draw pretty pictures. We don't just make websites. We start with research and strategy so that all that stuff actually can get you an ROI. That's what we do. The tactics that we use are everything: strategic branding, videos, web development, any kind of content management, traditional advertising, TV, radio, print. You want to be on TV? We can put you on TV. All kinds of digital marketing, everything. This is just, good God, a quarter of the team right now, to kind of give you an idea. This is a little outdated, but some of our clients, just to give you a quick idea. And let's get into this archetype identification. So the way that this is going to roll, everyone, is I'm going to go through the 12 archetypes. And archetypes are really personalities. Every single business has a primary archetype and a secondary archetype that are usually relatively strong. Some people have a tertiary or third archetype that also will come up at certain points in time. The point to this, if I was to oversimplify it, everybody, is that your business's archetype is typically driven by the owner's archetype, right? Whoever the owner and the decision maker is typically going to create that archetype, that personality. And don't confuse this with culture, and you'll understand as we go through this. The point, to oversimplify it, is if you understand really who you are as an archetype and who your business is an archetype, and you communicate that way to people, you will find matches that are customers. So if you all know, you do business with people that you know, like, and trust. So if you're a horse person and you're talking to 10 people and one of them's a horse person, you're going to hit it off with them right away. That's the whole point to archetype identification. If you figure out that you're this particular type of archetype and you communicate that way, you're going to attract other people of the same archetype, and it's going to be much, much, much easier to do business with them. That's the bottom line point. All right, let's go through these 12 archetypes. And I want you to think about who you think you might be as we go through these, and then we're going to tell you how to specifically do the exercise that we would do with you to kind of really figure it out at the end, the how-to. So the innocent offers a simple solution to a clear problem. They're associated with goodness, morality, childhood. Good examples are Coca-Cola and Ben & Jerry's. So if you think about Coca-Cola ads are a perfect example, right? They're very, very happy and innocent, and just life of days gone by that have been wonderful. That's really that archetype identification, is the innocent. The psychographic, and this is really important because the psychographic, that's what you got. When I hit that psychographic on every one of these, that's really going to describe like your heart. So if in your heart, you really, everything about you is easy and fair, then this could be your archetype. And hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have questions, I'd love to wait to the end, of course, but if you have a question that's very pertinent, throw it up in the message thing, and Matt is moderating them. So if he sees one that he feels we can interrupt, he'll interrupt me and we'll answer it. Sorry. The regular gal or guy's second archetype gives people a sense of belonging. So characteristic of populist brands that distinguish themselves via everyday simple functionality, right? Walmart and Wendy's are perfect examples. If you think of Wendy's with Wendy, right? And the dad had this whole, they're just regular people, right? A dad and a daughter, and just like who we are and what we do. And Walmart is a great example. Just the everyday regular guy and gal, nothing special. The psychographic is really a group, a gang is a terrible word, actually. I don't like that one, although it is in the definition of this archetype. But group and a club of regular people, if you want to be in that group or club, is a great psychographic for you. If you're a loner, this wouldn't necessarily fit you, because that regular gal or guy archetype not only is regular, meaning from like a Walmart perspective, but they want to belong. They want to be part of a group or a club with other regular people versus somebody that wants to be special. The Explorer. So great examples are Google, Trader Joe's, right? They help people express their individuality. If you think about the regular gal or guy going to Walmart, they just want to go get their stuff, right? They don't go to, people that go to Trader Joe's are not going to fill their 2 grocery carts with enough food to feed 4 kids, right? They're going because they want special stuff and they want to express their individuality. They want to buy special coffee and they want to buy special this and special that. Google's another example to a lesser degree for it to be clear, but Trader Joe's is perfect. They break with convention, characteristics of brands that present new experiences. That's kind of where Google comes into play. And the psychographic is like extreme locations or sports. So that Explorer, and then you got Indiana Jones is perfect example. The Sage. So for those of you that well, capacity marketing, this is part of our archetype. As I told to you earlier in the beginning, what differentiates us from most marketing companies, that we really focus on the research and intelligence that drives the strategy and drives the actual tactics, the actual ads and commercials and whatever that we do. But it all starts with the research. So we are a Sage archetype for sure. So that serves as an educational role. Characteristic brands differentiate on basis of quantitative information, right, or experience. We're very, very information driven, not experience driven, because we believe that individuals are fallible and start to lack objectivity over time. So we always let the information drive the process, not people's opinions. Very, very, very important. IBM, great example. The psychographic tends to be very religious, moved by stats, right? That kind of stuff. The hero. This one's kind of clear, right? The hero solves problems, particularly difficult or social significant ones. Examples, Nike or Amazon. Nike, just do it, right? Like they're want you to be a hero. They're a hero. They want you to be a hero. And they created ad campaigns in an environment where basically every person could buy a pair of Nikes and be a hero, if you think about it. The psychographic is last minute, difficult setting, rain, just very, they like to solve problems and dive into trouble. Now, it'd be very interesting where as we go through, we'll see something like caretaker, right? There's people who like to care for people. And it's easy to get hero and caregiver confused, right? Because it kind of seems like the same thing, but you need to try to differentiate between them. It's super important that you get the nuance of your specific archetype. You may be secondarily a hero, right? If you were a caregiver, like let's say a nurse or a doctor would tend to be a caregiver typically, and secondarily you could be a hero, or the other way around, but they are different and subtly. So really understanding the difference between the two, and maybe even digging in a little bit more than this presentation that we're doing. If you think you're one of them or you're confused between the two of them, go ahead and Google hero archetype or caregiver archetype to figure out. I'm going to pause here real quick to tell you a great story, because we've got Sage and Hero here. as a great example. So one of our clients is San Miguel Academy of Newburgh. They are a nonprofit school that it's kind of a complicated model a little bit. They take kids off the street, I guess is the only way to say it, in Newburgh, that are middle school age, and they literally put them in a school for the middle school years, literally for 3 years. That's all it is on paper. But what they really do is during those 3 years, they teach those kids, right? So instead of going to middle school, they go there. So you would originally think that they're a sage, they're a school. Every school in college is going to be a sage, right? It's obvious. And that's what everybody thought going into the exercise. But as you dig in, you realize that teaching is like the classes is the least of what they do. What they really do is they show these young boys how the other half lives, to kind of coin a phrase. So these boys only know living in the streets of Newburgh. That's some of them. That's all they've experienced, and all the stereotypes that go with that. So they take these kids, and not only do they teach them, but they put them on a row team. So like row team, right? Rowing, like that's what Harvard kids do, right? They join the row team crew. So here these kids are, they would never have an opportunity to be on a row team, and they go on a row team. They compete on a row team. Other sports they compete in with other schools, and they talk and bump into kids that come from different families of different status. One of the main benefactors is owner of the Giants, or the Jets. I am a terrible sports guy, football team in New York. And they put all the kids in a van and they bring them there. And you can hear these kids tell these stories. One kid tells a story that they pulled into the parking lot and they pulled right up to the front door of Giants Stadium and parked where it had a big plaque that said owner's parking space. And their minds were blown as they were brought up into the box of the owner's box of Giant Stadium. And it just opens their minds to the possibilities that are out there are not limited to the city block that they live on. And then they follow these kids throughout their high school career, and even into college, to like help them get into a private high school that's like grant funded or scholarship funded, help them to get into college. And they are the kids that graduate this program end up being all kinds of stuff. They join the military, they get into politics, it's very amazing. So during our research and us asking lots of people the questions that we asked to identify an archetype, we really found out that they weren't a sage. They were a hero. And that's probably kind of evident now that I've just rambled to you about this, but the way that we found this out was talking to parents. So talking to a single mom that cried during the interview and told us that we changed her child's life and changed the trajectory of her entire family history. Those are the kinds of things that really help identify. So, perfect example, if we were to communicate SAGE all day long for that school, great school, smart school, teaches your kids better than anybody else. I'm going to stop share here because I want to see everybody. If we were to advertise that they are the smartest school in the world and they teach kids better than anybody else, does anybody care? Versus if we were to advertise and use the speech that basically, and in social media and advertising and everything else, say we change these kids' lives and show examples of kids who got off the street and became a politician. Like, whole different ball game. I'll give you other examples as we go on here that'll really help you continue to understand this. Sage and hero we talked about. Okay, outlaw. Appeals to people who feel excluded. So if you've ever felt excluded, right, or disenfranchised, right, this representative of brands that break from category, convention, or compete primarily by projecting a rebellious attitude, right? So examples, Virgin is a fantastic example. Virgin Airlines is owned by, help me out, Matt, his name just flew out of my head. I gotta unmute everybody. Well, look it up if you don't know. Oh, Branson, Richard Branson. I'm picturing him. I couldn't think of his name. So Virgin is owned by Richard Branson, right? If you know anything about that guy, or you've ever seen that guy on TV, or you've ever seen an ad about that guy or anything, he's like an extreme sports rebel. Like he personifies that. Even as a 50, 60-year-old guy, that is him. That is his archetype to the core of his heart and bone and blood that flows through his veins. That is his archetype. So he has effectively taken things like an airline and been able to take his outlaw archetype and use it in a way that makes his company successful. And the great example of how in the world would you do that? Great example. Red Bull, another good example. Psychographic is, of course, body modification, rock stars. I am, just to share fun facts, I was probably a little bit of an outlaw when I was younger. My personal archetype is sage. As an adult, I could tell you I made that flip probably at about 23 or 25, around that area, when I first got married and bought my first house and really started to embrace the education that I missed, because when I was in school, I was an outlaw. Archetype, not literally. So I really changed, but I was that guy in high school and what have you. So interesting too, you can change your inner archetype, of course. It usually happens because of a life-changing thing or something to that effect, because it's really you and your personality. But you go from being an ex-rock star, loner, outlaw kind of a person, and all of a sudden you get tired of that, which is what happened to me. And I wanted to get married. I wanted to have a house and a white picket fence. I wanted kids. That was a fantasy of mine at that point. I literally changed my personality. So that can happen. The Magician offers transformative experiences, products, and services. Apple, Dyson, great examples of things that you don't know how they work, but they do. Is a great example. So this is a fascinating another example that I'll give you. Not example, but so you have the sage, which is me, right? And we're moved by stats and education and quantitative information. Can you imagine how a sage feels about Apple and Dyson? Things that just work, but nobody knows how. That drives a sage crazy. And hopefully that makes sense. So, but people that are not a sage, and especially have a magician archetype, they think that's the best thing in the world. They think that's absolutely fantastic. When an Apple phone just does something, they think that's fantastic. Me, I want to know, why did it do it? and it didn't do it the way I wanted it to do it. And that aggravates me to no end. So Apple, in everything that they do, turns me off, believe it or not. And believe it or not, because their archetype solidly revolves around it just working well, I can't even use it because it doesn't work well for me. It goes that far against my internal grain, if that makes sense. But they know who they are, and they say who they are very well, and that results in them having a following that's huge. Okay, the lover helps people connect with others. Characteristic of brands whose primary appeal is sensory. What's that?
Share your screen, please.
Oh, it's not shared? Sorry. I thought that was too easy. Thanks, Matt. All right. So lovers help connect with others. Their primary appeal is sensory and visceral. So, and the psychographic is overly sensory. So really, really, really think about that. People who need to see and touch and feel and talk things out, right? That's a very lover psychographic. People who, I think Matt, I don't know if Matt's full #1 archetype is lover, but he absolutely has archetype in him. I'll give you an example. If Matt and I are strategizing about something together, about a client or even our own internal marketing, and we're talking about ideas. So we're basically just talking about ideas, right? Like, oh, we should do this, or maybe we should do that. He has to write them on a whiteboard. Drives me crazy because it's not the steps that we have to do. It's not things that we don't want to forget, me anyway, right? Because my personality archetype is different. I'm the sage. So I'm like, if we're talking about something, I have them all. They go in my little data bank in my head. And to me, it's completely inefficient waste of time to write out the words that we are speaking to each other. Why would you do that? But Matt, it helps him because he's visual and sensory, and he's a photographer and a videographer, where I have no interest whatsoever in taking pictures or videoing. So understanding who you are at this level will be super huge in how you communicate. Haagen-Dazs and Starbucks are great examples. Starbucks did a fantastic job of essentially, they took coffee beans, and if you know anything about coffee, they essentially burned coffee beans beyond the point of being coffee anymore so that they're consistent. But they created a brand around the sensory and visceral experience of going to get a cup of coffee. Now, a lot of people fell in love with the taste of Starbucks coffee, which for a coffee connoisseur is crazy. But they really didn't start out as like good coffee. That wasn't the point. The point was the sensory and visceral experience of going in and having somebody make you a cup of coffee and having it take 8 minutes and hearing the funny sounds, of the foam being done and all that. That was their model. So again, overly sensory. The jester helps people have a good time. Representative entertainment brands are those whose mission is to challenge established brands. Their psychographic is fun. They want to be entertained. I'm just going to keep picking on Matt because I can. I think Matt's got a little bit of this in him. And it's important to understand, it doesn't mean that when I say Matt's got a little bit of jester archetype in him, It doesn't mean that he has to be the funny guy. It doesn't mean that he's Chris Farley. That's not at all what it necessarily means. It means that he wants people to have a good time. He wants people to be happy. He wants them to be fun and entertained. Whereas I have a limited capacity for that, right? I like it, but like I need a nap afterwards. Whereas Matt is fueled by it, if that makes any sense. Geico is a great example, right? Geico is an insurance company, and this is their archetype that they have chosen and they have stuck with for forever. Between the bikers and Flo and the gecko and the cavemen, right? They just keep going down that path of it's kind of fun, right? It's kind of a fun insurance to have, Geico. Here's the caregiver, supports families and helps people care for others, usually brands with a more altruistic motive, right? So very important. So I talked about the lover and the caregiver and maybe the difference between them. The lover is more visceral and visual, and I'm sure likes people and loves people if we take the words verbatim. But what makes the caregiver different is that altruistic motive, right? They don't care about themselves. They just want to help other people. Their psychographic is they want people to be safe and have no problems. So counselors and doctors, nurses, things like that. Volvo is a great example, right? That is their entire archetype, is that they're safer and they want you to be safe and cared for in their car. So those are the 12. I'm going to pause for 2 seconds. Matt, was there anything that really popped up that we should address before we get into telling everybody how to really nail down their archetype?
Nope. Chat's been pretty quiet.
All right, cool. Are you all okay? Is this going fast enough? And am I too slow, too fast, boring you? All right, we got a couple thumbs up, a couple head shakes. All right. All right, we're gonna bang into this. This is gonna tell you how to do it. Okay. It's very important that you follow these instructions and take them very seriously. And I'm going to explain to you why. Because for you to truly understand your archetype, you would think it's easy, right? You would think you know yourself, and you would think it'd be pretty easy if one of those resonated with you. But it's not. And I'm going to tell you why. We all have a ton of emotional and psychological baggage that keeps us from being objective about even our own archetype. So try to follow these instructions objectively and don't just go with, if you saw one of those that resonated with you and you're like, oh, that's my archetype. Try not to do that. Try to follow these instructions. And I'll save the doggy daycare example for the end because it's just a fantastic example of how you can use all this. So don't let me forget, Matt.
Hey, Eric, just real quick.
Yes.
Gerald is just curious. He said that he saw 10 archetypes. Did we miss 2 of them?
Did we? One, Master, Lover, Magician, Outlaw, Hero, Sage, Explorer, Regular Guy or Gal, Innocent. How many was that? Did you count?
You're moving too fast on me.
That's crazy. He's right. But this is the thing that we do all the time. I'm going to have to find the other 2. Did we do Rebel? Well, I'll tell you the other two if I can figure out which ones I didn't do. Rebel is one, not to be confused with outlaw. Why is it not popping up? That's crazy. I know it's in here, but it's not showing for some reason. Anyway, okay, Rebel is one of them. We'll share this with anybody who wants it. Just shoot us an email. Matt'll throw an email up there. Shoot us an email, and we will share the PowerPoint with you if you want, and make sure that the 12 are in there. But one of them that's missing, you're right, is Rebel, and that's like Harley Davidson is an example. They kind of want to go against the status quo in any way, shape, or form that they can. And I'm not, the 12th one is not popping into my head right now. If we have some time, I'll pop in and try to find that last one before we all get off. And totally odd, because we've done this presentation a million times before. I don't know if when it converted or shared, it dropped a couple pages. It's weird. Anyway, all right. Step one of identifying this core archetype of your brand. And when we talk about brand, this is really what we talk about. Explain how and why your company came to be. So super, super important. Now, you may be like, yeah, I needed a job and I opened up the newspaper and there you go. I became an insurance person. True story for me in a past life. But if it's something that's a little different, and again, I'll share my example. My first job was insurance because I needed a job, and I opened up the paper and they were like, we'll pay you and train you. And I said, okay, I'm in. Nothing archetypy about that, right? But later on in life, the reason that I started Capacity Consulting almost 20 years ago was because I read a book on McKinsey and Company, a management consulting firm, and I learned that there was a job called management consulting. I didn't know that existed. And when I read what that job was, my head exploded. I just went, oh my God, that's the vocation that I was designed for. That's how I think. That's me. And I had an epiphany, and I padded my E-Trade account for a year's worth of living expenses. And I quit my job and opened up a consulting firm from scratch. So that's pretty powerful, right? And that was the sage in me that was speaking. So really, when I looked back and said, how and why did my company come to be? It identified my archetype right away. Express what motivates you and your team to come to work each day. Right? So why do you go to work each day? You know, assuming you like your job, right? And you like your company and your brand. Describe how you've helped customers. Not what you do, right? I'll use insurance again because it's easy, right? Somebody needed car insurance. I gave them car insurance and I saved them money. Woohoo! Not that. Like, describe how you help them make a better decision in insurance, or describe how you found out the details of their computer issues to really help them, right? I'm trying to speak to some of the people I know are on here. That's really, you got to get into the heart of it. What motivates you from your heart? Demonstrate how you differ from competitors. This is a great one, and we're going to talk about this in the third seminar. We're going to dig into competitive analysis. Show what it's like to work at your company. So what is it like? Explain what it's like. Try to explain to somebody what it's like to work at your company every day. And again, we're talking about the emotion of what it's like to work at your company every day. Not, we start at 8 and we take a lunch break at 12. Not the operational mechanics, but the emotion is really what we're trying to go for. So do all that and try to come to a conclusion. And then go to step 2, which you don't really try to come to a conclusion, just do all that. Step 2 is you really trying to analyze all that to come to a conclusion. So analyze those stories and try to find common themes in the way your brand behaves. So this is a really important part of research. Do all 5 of these things and like write the answer down. Don't stress about trying to figure out what archetype you are on step 1, bullet 1. Just answer the question from an emotional perspective. Next bullet, just answer the question quick from an emotional perspective. Answer quickly. Then go back and look at the 5 and see if there was a common theme in the way that you answered those questions. Hopefully that makes sense. I can't see you all because I got to share screen up, but hopefully everyone's shaking their heads. Very important to kind of find that common theme. Look for the role that your brand plays in people's lives. So maybe in all those 5 answers, you could see, again, a trend in how you affect people's lives, the role it plays in people's lives. And here's more importantly what I was getting at, how your brand impacts the outcome of the story, right? So if you're an insurance person and you sell insurance, you could say, okay, my brand impacted the outcome of the story because they needed insurance and they got it. No, that has nothing to do with your brand. That's just what you do. That's your day-to-day operations. That's what you do. How your brand impacted the outcome of the story is that person felt safe and they trusted you when they bought that insurance. That would be a brand impact. If you're a Sage insurance person, you looked at all the insurance policies, including the one that they already had, and you pointed out all the shortfalls of all those insurance policies and found the best one at the best price. That's a brand impact, right? Hopefully everybody's starting to get this. It's the stuff that you pour in extra from your heart. Examine how these themes relate to the archetype descriptions we showed you and select the archetype or 2 that seems most representative of your brand, right? You can have multiple, but try to identify a primary and a secondary. Then study other brands that apply archetypes well. So even some of the ones that we cited in there, look at them and see if your brand identifies with any of them. See, is my company just like that? Is my company just like Apple or Dyson? Is my company just like Ben & Jerry's? Is my company just like Walmart? Step 4, assign archetypes to your competitors' brands. Now you're going to do this whole exercise that you just did for yourself, you're going to do for your competitors, right? Based on how they behave and how customers perceive them. Again, that's all personality, emotional stuff there. Then ask yourself how your brand is similar or different from them. Again, we'll get into that a little bit more in our 3rd seminar. Step 5, ask your customers to explore the archetypes that best describe your brand. This is one of the most powerful things. If capacity marketing gets hired to do this exercise and figure out what a company's brand archetype is, this is one of the most powerful things that we do. We interview customers, and I would absolutely suggest that you do that. You know, ask your customers what they think your archetype is, and you don't need to ask what their archetype is, but you know, could you describe the emotion of our business or our brand in some way, shape, or form? Like, let them go off the rails a little bit, because you can collect all kinds of great information. Step 6, describe your primary and secondary brand archetypes in a short phrase. This will either point to or directly articulate your brand's core essence. Again, for us to do it for somebody objectively, this is a pretty simple process. It's a little more difficult for you to do it on yourself because you have to be objective. So you have to really question yourself. I'm going to close this with a great example of why you want to do this and how powerful it is. We just did this presentation about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago now, right before this whole COVID thing happened, to a class of 25 entrepreneurs. Let me pop out of here. We presented this class this presentation to a class of about 25 entrepreneurs. And I knew what everybody did around the room, and we were kind of talking as we were doing through it, because it was a 2-hour seminar instead of smashing this into 45 minutes. One of them was a doggy daycare. And the woman who owned the doggy daycare, when we asked her, like, why, so tell us what's special about your daycare and what's awesome. And she had identified herself as a caregiver. So she said, my doggy daycare, I'm going to care for your dogs better than anybody else. Who cares, right? Everybody says that. Every doggy daycare says they're going to care. We're going to care for your dogs better than anybody else. Yeah, whatever. That holds a lot of weight, doesn't it? We're cleaner. We're safer. We're better. Those are all empty, right? And if you were to communicate with your customers or new customers that way, they're going to ignore you. It's going to fall on deaf ears. They could care less. What we found out when we did a super accelerated exercise like this with her in the room with the other 24 people, we found out that the reason she started this doggy daycare is because she literally loves to be around, and she used the word hug, dogs all day long. So she at home hugs her dogs, like hugs them when she wakes up, hugs them every time she feeds them, hugs them. If she could just hug a dog all day long, she would just be as happy as she could be. Well, guess what? Her archetype is not more a caregiver. It was more a lover. So, and I want to point out psychology here for a second before I do the finale. Remember, the caregiver is altruistic. Is she hugging that dog because that dog wants to be hugged? Or is she hugging that dog because she wants to hug that dog? Little side note, but when I tell you to try to be objective with yourself, think about that, right? Think about, we really want your selfish, I say that in a good way, not in a bad way, what is selfishly in your heart and what selfishly motivates you. That dog is probably like, let me go, dude. But so she's doing it for herself, not because she thinks the dog needs it. A veterinarian would be a caregiver. He could cut into that dog and save that dog because he's altruistic, and he doesn't care if he hurts the dog while he's doing it. He just wants the dog to be okay at the end of the day. See the difference? Back on track. Once we found out that she was a lover and not a caregiver, and that she hugged her dogs, here's how her messaging to her customers changed. Instead of saying, we're better and cleaner and we're going to care for your dogs while you're on vacation, she said, while you're on vacation, your dog is going to get hugged at least 3 times a day. Are you going to be more apt to leave your animal at the doggy daycare that's run by a veterinarian that says it's clean and safe and better? Or are you going to be more apt to leave your dog at her doggy daycare where she's going to hug the damn thing 3 times a day? And I'll answer the question for you. You might be one or the other archetype. Interesting point, right? Because we want to match. We want to match perfect customers. She just drilled right into the brain of her perfect customer by saying that. So other dog lovers, they want to hug their dog all day long, they are just going to run to her. Like, she's going to be filled with people that get her, understand her, not going to be PIA clients at all, right? They're just going to love her and just be perfect clients. That's what we're trying to do. That's really the whole point to this. And I hope that makes sense. And I'm going to conclude. And if anybody's got any questions, we'll open it up. I think I'm going to turn off all the mutes if I can. And then just like raise your hand if you want to talk, and we will, I'll call on somebody. Some people don't have their camera on, so it doesn't look like everybody's going to talk at the same time. So go ahead.
I could you just repeat that statement again? I really liked it about drilling into the brain.
Yeah, sorry, which one, Jerry?
You were just talking about how when you match archetype between the business and the customer, that it really drills into the brain of the customer. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna mute again because I seem to be.
Thank you. There's an echo.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to use an analogy that I use all the time. Matt gets nervous when I use this one because it skates a little bit, but it's so perfect. It's dating. So we have all dated. We have all hopefully have all been in love at some point in our lives. I'll make it even easier. We have all connected with someone, right? At some point in our lives. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a lover, maybe it's a spouse. It really doesn't matter. But you all know how hard it was to find that person. It's very difficult to find your soulmate. That's a good term for it, right? If you knew how to do this, and I'm going to use a bar, right? Because it's just simple, right? If you're looking for your soulmate and you walked into a bar and you knew what your archetype was and you knew how to get it out of anybody that you talk to, you could find your soulmate a lot faster. So what we're doing from a marketing perspective is we're looking for our soulmates. We're looking for our soulmate customers. We're looking for customers that think the same way that we do. And you all know this. You have all had a customer or a client that is just not a good match, right? They just don't get you, or you don't like them, even though maybe they're paying you to do something, right? That's an extreme example of a mismatch. And like a soulmate is an extreme example of a match. But we really just want to get you as close to a match as possible for your customers. And here's what's important, I think, to Jerry's point, and really to bring this home. It's so much easier to close somebody that matches. If they don't match, if they're all the way on this end of the spectrum and you're trying to close them, you could be speaking the wrong language. You could be saying the complete wrong, you could be turning them off. So I'll unmute again if for any other one. Anybody else? Hey, Judith, I remember you signing up. So hi, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you've definitely got wisdom there. And I think your analogy is perfect. It's so much easier to close people that are synergistic.
Yeah.
And so gratified by doing business together. You know, it really works for both parties.
Exactly.
If only there was you know, that magic bullet to make it work every time, but we do. I don't think we could stay in business only to people that match us exactly.
Well, and that's the.
But it does make more sense to spend energy going, trying to find those people. That's where the marketing should be.
Right. So I put everybody on mute again, but you can unmute yourself if you want to, just because of the echo thing. That's exactly right. Like the whole goal right now. And let me bring it back to COVID, right? Let me bring it back to quarantine and where we are right now. The normal point of branding and getting this archetype right is exactly as Judith just described as well. It's just like matching to the perfect customers. But it is so important right now. I told you at the beginning of this seminar that there are two things that people are doing to try to stay in business in this environment. One is reinventing themselves, which I don't like, we're not really talking about that, right? The other one is doing business virtually, right? How does a real estate agent do business virtually? How does an insurance is easier, right? Because people kind of need it, but how do some businesses do business virtually? And how do you market virtually? Knowing your archetype and communicating your heart and your archetype out through digital means and social media and posting and all those kinds of things becomes infinitely more important. And this particular situation that we're in is an opportunity. If you look at this as an opportunity, all the rest of the people that might compete with you or that are in your business, they're all freaking out. They don't know what to do. You can take advantage of this particular situation and institute some of this stuff properly. You can't go on Facebook right now and ask people to buy stuff. And you never could, really. You can't be like, hey, we're on sale, buy our stuff. Hey, you want to buy our stuff? You want to help us up and buy our stuff? Like, nobody wants that right now. So you really need to connect with people, and then they will want to buy from you at some point. But that connection is first.
Hey, Eric, if I could just add a couple things here.
No.
You know, I just want to follow through with one of the points that you were making earlier. Is often brands or small business has a tendency to try to talk to everybody at the same time, right? So what we're really saying here with social media and digital and these direct forms of contact, you got to be a little bit smarter than that. This is not a billboard on the West Side Highway where you are technically talking to everybody who drives down that road. With digital and social, you have a opportunity to speak to one particular demographic or psychographic, right? You can put that targeted messaging out there and connect with that particular audience. So it's really important to, one, understand how they want to be spoken to, and two, different demographics and psychographics are using different forms of digital and social, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter. You know, there's all those opportunities out there. But to really hammer home what you were saying earlier, Eric, is instead of just trying to put a wide, broad message out there, figure out what your archetype is so you can really start talking to that other archetype so you have a bigger return on your investment. And the reason why you have a bigger return on your investment is because you're talking to an audience that already gets you, and they already will understand your brand. So they're automatically going to be able to connect with you much easier, which means you're going to be able to close that business easier, which means you can make more money. And as you start to fill that bucket of being really good at talking to that audience that just automatically understands you, then you can jump into targeting your messaging at somebody a little bit different. Maybe it matches just one of your archetypes, right? And then you can really kind of target what that messaging looks like to them, and rinse and repeat and evolve and continue that growing and scaling your business.
Yeah, a great example, Matt. We do a lot of work with nonprofits, and nonprofits need to get donations from everybody, right? So we spend a lot of what we end up doing with archetypes is not archetypes, sorry. A lot of what we end up doing with nonprofits is explaining to them that they're really talking to 4 and sometimes 5 generations at any given point in time. And each of those generations, as a stereotype, of course, communicates and thinks differently, particularly when it comes to donating. You know, so the elderly population, our grandparents, they used to just set money aside, like they budgeted money to give away, whether it was to the church or anybody else. Baby boomers, they needed to be asked. Gen X, like these are the specific needs, right, to them. They didn't just put it aside, they need to be asked. Gen X wanted to know that the money was going to be used for good and it didn't go too much to salaries or anything. So there's these different needs that you need to hit. If you just treat everybody like they're the elderly generation that budgeted it, you're not going to get it. You're only going to get it from them. And the other 4 generations are going to ignore you. So that's all I got, unless anybody's got another great question. Just unmute yourself if you do. And if not, we're going to call it. We're pretty much right on time. Thanks, guys. The next one is 11 o'clock next Thursday. That one is going to dig into what we call a situational analysis. It's lots of research outside and about yourselves, a little bit inside, to help you start to identify what tactics might work for you. So this is really talking about your brand, right? There's 2 pieces of research that we do when we take on a new client. Number 1 is the brand, what we just talked about, figuring out who you are and what your messaging is and what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, right? I'm going to hug your dog 3 times a day versus we're clean and safe. That's messaging. That's all brand. The other half is research that's done to figure out what tactics really work for your particular industry, right? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Is it billboards, right? Is it sales? You know, no advertising works at all. You just got to go out and do sales. So this next seminar, this coming Thursday at 11 o'clock will be that second half. So thank you. Lastly, if you enjoyed this at all, we have to do what we preach, right? And ask you, please, 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 like us on Facebook. Just pop on Facebook and make sure you like us. And while you're there, if you have experienced us or you feel like this was of value, please give us a rating. It's very important in this digital world that we're in right now, especially with what's going on, where we can't go out and do sales either. It's all digital online. So please give us a referral on Facebook and rate us. You can also do the same thing on Google. If you Google us and that little thing comes up on the side with the picture of like the outside of our building, there's an ability to give us a 5-star or whatever rating you want to and give us a little quote. That would be fantastic. So like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's lots of great videos on there, not necessarily educational, but of our work. And thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Thanks, Eric.